minutes. If you need less time for any reason, let me know.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah.
Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night. It's 7:04 p.m. Central Time, and got Jay McNicholas here with us. Jay's rocking it. He's conscious. That's
I'm
always
awake.
good. He's
20
tired.
degrees up here. You can't sleep in this 20 degrees.
20. It's cold down in Florida too. It's cold and wet. Like gross outside, just like this cold, wet. Ugh. We got Carter Buschardt with us here tonight. The third time we're doing a trilogy, and then we're gonna fly him in again for some prequels in the future. So he's at the trilogy.
That's it.
The third show, The Revenge of Carter
The
Buschardt.
three-time winners.
Yeah. It's great to have him here. We originally had Christopher Golden and Arthur, but something happened. So Carter stepped in, and I'm glad. And maybe we'll get Christopher another time. He only went to Christopher. These big time Arthurs just want to do like 40 minutes or something, which is okay. But then I got to talk with stuff for Jay for like an hour and 20 minutes. So it's usually TV shows or whatever. I know I tried to get Anne Rice once. She passed away. That's another one that sucks. I've always loved her books, but she wanted to do like 15 minutes. And I didn't do it. It's like you can't even fart in 15 minutes. Well, you can, but 15 minutes. But anyway,
no, it takes me 15 minutes to prep.
I know, right? That's like Stephen King. I'll give you 5 minutes. I've never got a hold of him. I'd love to, but I'm sure it's short too, which maybe an hour if you're lucky. But great to have you here, Carter, and it's always a pleasure. And I know when I spoke to you, you said that you were having a lot of esoteric kind of Bigfoot stuff. What do you mean by that?
Well, when I had I've had some really interesting communications with rocks and gifting. And this started when I led an expedition in 2019 in Illinois for BFRO. I went back a year later, and I went back this year. And each year something has happened. Now, when I was having the main event that started all of this with the gifting, we had an event. And at my house here, 325 miles away from where I was in Illinois, my wife saw a blue orb come flying into our bedroom, do a couple of turns, and flew into the bathroom and disappeared. This was within 5 or 10 minutes of the event that I was having, a communication event with Sasquatch down in Illinois. It was not a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. It just happened. It was just, at the same time, they were getting a signal here. Maybe it was for me, maybe they didn't know I was gone, but it was going on in Illinois and it went on here. Now, she saw this orb in the room, but she also saw it in the mirror. So it wasn't like a car going by our bedroom window. She saw it in the mirror. So she saw it, and then she saw the reflection over here. So she saw it in two different places at the same time. So it wasn't like a hallucination. And ever since then, we've had knocks on our door, disembodied voices. Something pulled a pillow out from underneath my wife's head one night while she was sleeping. Something had lifted me up, and like a bunch of little hands had gone under my legs and was carrying me off the side of the bed. And I looked over at my wife, said, are you looking at this? Do you see this? And she just said nothing. She was awake, but she said nothing. She was like in a trance or something. It was just bizarre. So that kind of stuff has just been happening in the last year and a half, 2 years, since 2019, October 2019. Odd stuff, coat hangers rattling in my office closet here, and there's nobody here, there's no vents. It's just strangeness, and I equate it to my Sasquatch research, because whenever I had this event, this is when it all started, and it's continued. And then I've gone back to Illinois twice, and I've had continuation of the gifting event that I had that started all this. Some of it you can kind of, write off and blow off and go, well, that was something that was, somebody knocked on the front door. We just thought it was. But we're laying in bed one afternoon, and clears the bell. There's nothing but a knock on our door, and there's nobody there. Of course, there's nobody here. We just live alone. So anyway, yeah, it's bizarre, and I can't really explain it other than I believe it's associated with what I had going on. And so, and that triangular craft I showed you, that was from a gentleman that called me 3 weeks ago. And he had seen me on a podcast, and he he was in the military, and part of his job in the military was to misinform the enlisted men who were watching radar screens, and they were watching the Tic Tac stuff. He was around for the Tic Tac stuff, and part of his job was to adjust the screens so they could not see what else was going on in the background. The screens had static controls where you could fix the contrast and brightness, and they were to be left alone. Well, there was things that were going on that were being recorded elsewhere that these enlisted guys could not see, but they could see the Tic Tacs, and he was there for all that. And so that was part of his gig.
Interesting.
And then when he left the military, he got into law enforcement. He left law enforcement. He had to retire doing an on-the-job injury, not a gunshot, but just on-the-job injury. He couldn't do his job as a cop anymore. So he's back working for the government in another unspecified area. But that drawing I showed you, they had a Sasquatch slap the house 3 times. Like I said, there's 3 people lived there, his wife, himself, and his son. They had glyphs left on the ground, and one of these glyphs, for the listeners who don't know what a glyph is just a structure, twigs or branches laid on the ground in certain shapes. It's a communication device. It's triangle shapes and stuff like that. Anyway, he had a glyph laid on the ground, many of them, but one of them had 3 planets in it, 3 rocks was what it was. I think 2 rocks and an acorn is what was in it. The drawing he made for me showed Earth, Saturn, and Venus. This came to him in his head for about 2 months every night after that slap. He would see it, and it was a craft, and he was flying through space. And then the craft would get further away from where he was, and it would kind of turn up anyway. But he saw this stuff, and this was all going on. I'm getting these kind of reports now for my books, because I'm going after the people that are having these incredible events that are off the charts, not your road crossings, but I'm talking about paranormal, quantum type events that are inexplicable by conventional means, and they're coming through the woodwork. I mean, I can't. The phone rings once a week at least with something that just blows your mind. It's awesome. These people don't have a voice because people laugh at them. They're ridiculed and scorned because you saw what he said, what he did. Come on, you know how it is.
It's an interesting picture. It's the black triangle you shared with Saturn and the planets in it.
Yeah, I'll stick it back up.
And at one point, I've had triangle encounters several times in my life. One time I was with a friend of mine, Greg Gordy, when I was younger, 20s or somewhere you were about then, 1996, somewhere around then. I lose count of the time and year. But I remember a Marilyn Manson concert, which was insane and scary at the same time, but it was around that time. And I saw some triangle craft over power lines in the country, and they were just parked there, and a golden ball came out of them towards us. And I don't really remember much else, but I've asked him about it later, and he don't remember a damn thing. And I know he was there right next to me, and I saw it. But I have a lot of weird ones like that to where you wonder, like, did they take me? But I don't really know if they did. But I've had some weird ones where they've been over the house, and it seems like they're there because of, I've even had friends say, they're there because of you, Jeffrey. And that just freaks you out more. But I've wondered if I've been taken, but I really don't know. If I have, I don't remember a damn thing. But I have seen some weird beings a few times too. But I don't ever remember being naked in a UFO or anything weird like that or anything like that. If so, it's some weird suppressed crap that is buried deep that got
Well,
my
you can try some regression hypnosis, and
regression
that unlocks
hypnosis.
some stuff for me. And speaking of being taken, you know, and that's a very interesting story. If you want me to tell it, or we can move on.
Yeah. Is that I remember one that had to do with some cars moving and stuff. Is that the same one or a different one? Or the same one?
Yeah, it's the same one, but some things,
You can tell us it.
something that's popped up. Well, you know, as a kid, and we'll get into Sasquatch, I promise. But when I was a kid, about 10 years old, I remember, this is the memory. I don't know, you guys maybe have the same thing where you remember things from your childhood, like I was so dumb, I almost got killed. I stuck my finger in a light socket, or I, was doing something. I was playing with fire or matches, or some kind of stupid thing. When you're 8, 9, 10, you say, oh, "Well, I should have been dead." I don't know what happened. Anyway, me and my buddy were racing bikes, Dallas, Texas, right in front of my house, and I was about 10 years old. It was summertime, and we were racing our bikes, and we ran a stop sign right in front of my house. I've always remembered this event, but right in front of us, a blue car just barely missed us. We could feel the breeze, and we were both going, "Oh my God, hope my mom didn't see that." I was looking around because it literally is right in front of our house, and this blue car almost creamed us both because we were just racing. We weren't paying attention and ran the stop sign. So, and I thought nothing of it. I mean, that's a story I always remembered. I'm not sure why it stuck, but it was something that I almost got killed. And so, fast forward to, I was just looking at the tapes today, 2004. Me, my wife, and another couple, we went to get hypnotically regressed. We wanted to all see if we had past lives. Just an interesting thing, we thought we'd get together. And she has this really nice place out here east of Kansas City. You have a maze. You walk around the maze, and you sit outside, and you calm down and get your vibes down. And then you go in, and she takes you under and just finds out if you had, it's regression and going back to your childhood or a past life. And so my wife went under. My other couple went under. My old comedy partner, his wife had remarried, so her new husband, they all went under, and they all told the different stories of what they were. I went last. They took me under, and I started crying and talking like a 10-year-old boy. I don't know, what do you do? And I relived this event where it was not a blue car, it was a spacecraft. And it took me and my buddy Craig on this craft. Now, I went under 4 times. You familiar with Dolores Cannon? She's a world famous regressionist.
Yes. I've heard of her. I've worked with Ozark too. Ozark, the place.
Ozark Publishing. Yeah. Her daughters run the thing now. She passed away about 6 years ago. But this lady that took me under was one of her students. I went to another one of her students in Springfield just to see if I could corroborate this story. And it was the same thing. Dolores took me under twice, and it was the same thing. So here's the story. This craft that I thought was whooshing by us, it took us into the craft. Now, Craig was the one they were after. I was there just because of collateral damage. I just happened to be there. We were always together, back in those days. And so I remember seeing the classic thing, seeing kind of a shrouded, see-through kind of gauze material. You could see these aliens. You could see these people, and they're moving around. I could hear him screaming, and I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't move. And you're probably familiar with screen memories.
Yes.
Where they give you something else to remember. So one of the screen memories I got was we used to go fishing at this pond, and I was trying to cast, and I caught him in the neck, and I saw my hook pulling his neck like this. And that never happened. I mean, if I'm fishing, he was screaming bloody murder. And what I think that was a memory for was them doing something to him. The second screen memory I had was a funeral buggy, a horse-drawn funeral buggy, very nice, very ornate with the brass lamps, and it was leather clad, had a nice canopy on it. It was a beautiful thing, and it was on this dike that used to be at this pond where we always went fishing. Well, that just showed up one day. We never ever saw anything like that, but it was there, and that was my screen memory. So the car, the fish hook, and the uh, funeral buggy were screen memories for other things that were going on.
Huh.
So
Interesting.
after I went under with this first lady,
Screen memories.
yeah, screen memories. You look them up, and so the Greys have the big eyes and stuff like that. So they'll have you remember like an owl or a deer or something with big eyes. And so if you thought you had a weird dream, well, that's weird. Oh, it's a deer. Oh, I must have seen a deer. And that's how they manipulate your brain to make you think you saw something else. Look it up. It's really cool stuff. So anyway, 2 days after this, so anyway, this lady hypnotizes me, and I'm just crying and telling all these stories. And everyone's going, they're talking about being a priest in the Phoenician days, and a fisherman on a fishing boat in the North Atlantic in the 20s, and all these other past lives. And I'm sitting here crying like a 10-year-old kid. Oh, I want my mommy. Everyone was just like, what's going on? And so 2 days after that, I wake up in the morning, and I come in and I draw a reptilian, which is not in my repertoire normally, But I drew this reptilian, I scanned it, emailed it to her, and she basically told me, I can't deal with this, don't call me again. I can't deal with this. Now, 2 weeks ago, I'm cleaning out, and I've lost that drawing. I cannot find it to save my life. But 2 weeks ago, I get on this cleaning binge where I want to go clean out all my. I used to be a songwriter, so I used to write a lot of songs. I did scribbles and artwork and stuff like that. And I'm going through my old notebooks from like 70s, 1970. I haven't seen some of this stuff since 1970. And there is a drawing of a reptilian.
Nice.
I completely don't even remember drawing it. I would write a song. I wrote a lot of songs and stuff. In my rock and roll days, and every now and then, if I had something floating around in my head, I'd draw a drawing to kind of go with it, just as a companion piece. Just for me. I mean, I'm not an artist by any means, but I found that, and I was showing my wife my songs. I was just flipping through this old notebook, what I hadn't seen in 30 years, 40 years, and she goes, wait, go back. I went back, and she goes, that's a reptilian. That's almost identical to what you drew in 2004 or 6, whatever it was. And this was like in my I was 25. I'm 70 now, so that's how long ago. So it's like, if that doesn't come full circle, because there was nothing on this page to commemorate me wanting to draw a reptilian, but it was a regular human head with scales, and it was almost closest to the one that I drew and sent to the hypnotist.
Interesting.
Crazy. It just and I'm kind of getting chills when I talk about it now, because it's like I forgot about the drawing, and I forgot about that memory was of me riding my bike. Had nothing to do with UFOs until I went under, and I was under to find out what my past lives were. And so I went under 4 times with twice with Dolores, once with another one of her students, once with this lady. And she freaked out, did not want to talk to me ever again. She said, I can't handle this. Just don't contact me.
Just because of the reptilian?
Yeah.
Well, Dolores, that's pretty big time. I mean, how did that go? I mean,
that went well. And she told me what Dolores told me. See, I've got 2 I have like 8 tapes. I've got 2 sessions with Dolores, 2 tapes each, and I've got one with the woman we went to for the past life regression, and one from another student who was down in Springfield. And so Dolores basically just told me, well, you're not supposed to know yet. You're not supposed to know what happened. You'll know at a certain time. And I said, well, how come I remember this differently? Well, she explained the screen memory thing. I said, but now that you've told me this, I know it and I believe it to be true, but how come I'm not reliving? She said, well, you're just not supposed to know. You weren't the person they were after. They're after your friend. And I can't find him at all. We went to the same school. I think he may have passed away. I tried contacting his couple of his kids, and they never responded. So it may not even have been the right Craig, Craig Whaley, from Thomas Jefferson High School. But what do you do with that? When that gets dumped in your lap? I mean, do you go, oh, that can't be, or do you embrace it? And had I not found this drawing a couple of weeks ago,
reptilians.
Yeah, and I have when I think of ET, I think of the Greys, and things of that nature. And so, mind-boggling. So, if you think something may have happened in your past, go try some hypnotic regression.
So I'm trying to figure out screen memories. I've heard of screen memories, but the way you put it definitely makes me think of it more, or want to anyway. It's when you have an event, let's say you have a UFO event, you see a UFO or maybe some beings. Is it your mind kind of overriding too much and replacing it with things that are more common that you are normal? I mean, is that kind of what it is?
Yeah. Well, here's one of my theories I use for Sasquatch, is that we are taught from the nanosecond you exit the birth canal how the world is. There's no UFOs, there's no ghosts, there's no Bigfoot. History is how we say it is, not how, they hand a teacher a book, and he is told, go teach these kids and teach them this book, and that's it. Here's your check. Thank you very much. Keep on going. So we've been told how the world works. So, and so your mind, when you see a Sasquatch or a UFO or anything you just can't comprehend, it's going to fill in the blanks with something. Well, that can't be a ghost. It has to be fog with an owl looking through in its eyes. I mean, your mind will fill in the blanks and explain away what you saw with something else that you know to be true and is not threatening. Now the screen memories supposedly are put in your head by the ETs to make you specifically forget specific things. Anytime you think you saw a UFO, missing time, anything like that, it's going to fill in a blank for something else.
Trippy stuff make you trip out thinking about that stuff too much.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. It's just, and I got to turn my phone off here. Sorry, somebody.
It's fine. One of my weirdest, I may have told you this one before, I don't remember, but one of my weirdest UFO things was in Lynn Haven, Florida. I was walking down the road, just taking a walk around the neighborhood, and this big orange rusty ball just floated across the sky. And nothing was connected to it. There was no chain. There was no helicopter. There was no crane. It was just like a big, weird, rusty, orange, heavy ball.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of my weirdest ones. And I always wonder what the hell was in there. And maybe it came from a water. It was just so weird. I remember I try to think about that one. Did more happen to me then? There's been weird ones like that, but just like this rusty freaking ball in the sky that looked like it weighed a gazillion tons. And
well, see, you're asking yourself questions because you saw the orange ball and you going, wonder if something else happened. When I was telling my story about the blue car for all of my life, well, I'll tell you what, I did something really stupid once. I ran a stop sign, almost got run over on my brand new bike. I had no connection with that to any kind of UFO or anything until I was regressed and it just kind of blurted out. So if you have questions, a good hypnotist, you don't want to tell them what you're looking for. You just say, I have a memory from my childhood I'd like to revisit and see if what I think happened. And just leave it at that because, there are charlatans out there. You got to find the right one,
Yeah, you got to be careful.
Any psychics or good psychics, they could probably recommend a regression hypnotist that can, help out with that kind of stuff. So,
I've
but it
thought
was,
about it, but it scares me because I've heard that. I don't know if you've ever heard of that Emma Woods case with David Jacobs and all that weirdness. Look it up sometime. It's like a crazy UFO hypnosis, crazy abuse case. I shouldn't laugh. It's serious. And
yeah. Well, John Mack did all that stuff.
yeah.
And he was killed walking across the street in London about 10 years ago. Accident.
This dude David, look it up sometime. Emma Woods, David Jacobs, but he hypnotized her and did weird, maybe sex stuff, like made her dress weird, just weird stuff that was creepy as hell, like Norman Bates. But not to say everybody's like that. Of course, that'd be foolish, but you have to be careful for sure.
Yeah. But so it just came full circle, and then and back to the Sasquatch stuff. In the second book, this one here, I've got a guy with missing time, 6 hours of missing time, seeing a Sasquatch. Now, did you read that in this book? It's in the first edition of the Green one. Anyway, he's an executive up in the Northeast. I can't say exactly where, but anyway, he's an executive and got a very successful company, and he lives out in the middle of nowhere, and he and his wife and had a cabin, but it was kind of small, and she got pregnant again, so they decided to add on to the cabin, and so he got him a attack dog, a trained police dog that was a German Shepherd that was literally one word in your hamburger. He would come after you. So, and that was their protection. So, and they had seen a Sasquatch or two at the house, and weren't sure what to do with it. They had a Sasquatch watching them mow the yard when they first moved in. It's like they were kind of getting to know the new neighbor. Who's the new guy here? Well, look, this mowing his yard. And she saw one running across the yard one night when he was at work late. So anyway, they were somewhat familiar with the subject. And so when she gets pregnant again, he decides to add on to the house. And she leaves the house and moves in with her parents who lived just a few miles up, 15, 20 miles away. And so her and the baby would have a place because they shut off all the utilities. He lived in a 32-foot travel trailer he had on his property. He stayed there at night because he would wake up in the morning, get the crews ready, and tell them what he wanted done while they were adding on to the new cabin. And then when he'd go to work, then he'd come back home and help put the tools away and go to bed and crawl in the trailer and go to bed. So anyway, one night he's out there and it's about 9:30, 10 o'clock, and he hears something. The dog alerts to something, and I'll keep the story short, but they look out and he sees a Sasquatch about 50 yards away from him. And it just starts walking toward him. Not threatening, but it was walking at him at a leisurely pace, but at a steady pace that was just getting closer and closer and closer. And the dog just sat there. He gave him the command, and the dog did nothing. It just sat. It sat like it was in a trance. It literally was sitting and hugging his leg. It was right next to his leg, almost leaning on him. And so he went, holy crap, we got to do something. So he grabbed a few tools, threw them back in the cabin, and then they ran to the travel trailer. And he didn't have a gun. He left his gun in the house. So he scrambled around the travel trailer. All they could find is a big butcher knife. And so by that time, he sees this creature, and it's walking around the house. It's looking in the windows. It's trying the door. It's kind of shaking the trailer, but it's not doing anything overt other than that. And he freaks. He goes. Him and the dog go into the bathroom, and a bathroom trailer is big enough for like one person. So him and the dog are sitting there like this, and he's got this knife, and he's pointing it at the door. He's waiting for this creature to come in and break in anytime. The dog is sitting right next to him in the bathroom. It's about 10:30, 11 o'clock. Next thing he knows, he wakes up 5:30 in the morning. He's in the same position holding this knife. The dog is sitting next to him, sitting up, asleep. The dogs don't sleep sitting up. They don't.
Yeah.
But they just don't.
Hmm.
And it was still leaning against him. And 6 hours had passed, and he felt refreshed. He didn't feel like he was cramped up or anything from sitting like this, tense. Like he was like, it was like a psycho movie. He was ready for this to come bust through the door and kill him. He wakes up. The only thing that wakes him up is the crew getting there for to work in the next morning, and his wife is there. She used to drive in and cook him breakfast. So he had no explanation for it. It's in the book. It's really, and I pretty much let all of his emails speak for himself. He doesn't want to know. He likes his boring life. He's an executive. Does very well. Has his own company. It's a tech company of some kind. And I don't want to know what happened. I know something, but there I was, and he didn't tell his wife until the house was finished. He didn't tell her for 6 to 8 months, a year, because he just didn't want to alarm her. They had a brand new baby coming. He didn't want to freak her out about that, so he didn't say anything until the kid was born. But there's missing time. I suggested, I said, Josh, go get hypnotized. You'll drive yourself crazy, wondering and putting it off rather than just doing it and finding what is it you're going to find out, because he doesn't want to find out maybe he was taken and implants or worse, they did whatever they do when they take it out. He just didn't want to find out. But it was Bigfoot. So there's that Bigfoot UFO connection that a lot of people are trying to make, and there are stories that make a lot of sense. You can't explain them, but you go, well, they see a UFO and they see a Sasquatch coming out of it, or they'll see a UFO right after a sighting or right before a sighting, or they'll see an orb right before or after a sighting. It's just, I'm hearing stories like that. You're not going to hear stuff like that on BFRO. They don't put anything out there that's even left or center by it. They just won't. So, crazy stuff. And I talk to these people. I say, just tell me your story. I'm not going to laugh at you or make fun. I want because I can probably tell you what happened. If I can't tell you, I'll tell you I can't tell you. But it all sounds legitimate, and there is something going on. There is an awakening. More people are coming forward with these tales that aren't road crossings or Sasquatch was watching me fish across the river. I looked up and there was one. Those are fascinating stories, of course, but I'm getting into the esoteric, stuff where they're reaching through the wall and knocking somebody out with a touch to your forehead, that kind of stuff. Sasquatch story. I mean, some of the things, mind speak and the locomotion and some of the things that won't make the daily news. I'm collecting them, and I've got this guy that I showed you with that triangle. He came out of nowhere. He reached out because he heard another podcast. He goes, I need to talk to somebody. So, and this is a government trained guy, a military guy who was ordered or trained to disinform some of his military people so they would not know what was going on these screens, because he was monitoring the screens and he could adjust the contrast and the static and all that. So you would only see what they wanted you to see, because if you give them a completely clear picture and pull back, there'd be all kinds of stuff going on. They just were not allowed to see that. So, there's stuff going on, guys. It's just bizarre, and this guy, he's a military guy and a cop and back in the military, or back in the government service, not the military. But, he was looking at me, like he was looking me in the eye, and he was waiting for me to blink or flinch or snicker or something. I said, I can't do that. I believe what you're telling me. Military, cops, pilots, they're some of the best witnesses you can ask for, because they're just the facts, man. And they pass the evidence on to the court systems or military to do what they want to with it. But they, they're sworn to secrecy, NDAs, and all that kind of stuff. So My world just got a whole lot crazier when I wrote my first book. I thought, well, I'm just going to share some reports and some insights and how they can count, how they do count people. Sometimes they communicate amongst themselves how many people are in the forest. And it just got more bizarre, more bizarre, more bizarre, more left centered. And Ron Moorhead had made some commentary in my first book, and it was greatly appreciated. And he's having the same things, and it's just it's exploding.
It's definitely fascinating, and I mean, as far as what is your breakdown of the Bigfoot UFO situation? I mean, I know there's many theories, but what do you think? What do you think their involvement is?
I'm starting to think there's some kind of connection, but I can't place it. And I've had a couple of people who have told me, well, I saw a Sasquatch coming out of a spacecraft. Well, if you buy into the theory, it's not really a theory. If you talk to enough people, what's really going on, that they're abducting humans and doing whatever with them, impregnating women and taking the fetuses out after a 4.5-month gestation versus 9 months, and then reintroducing them later. This is your child that you were carrying. And the women know it, but they just think they lost the child and it goes away. So anyway, if you buy into that, humans are being taken aboard these craft and experimented DNA manipulation, DNA gathering for hybrid work, then I can't say no. And maybe the Sasquatch coming out of a craft is one that was abducted and taken for work and being dropped back off. So someone sees it coming out of a craft. I'm trying to picture a Sasquatch piloting a craft, and if I base it on appearances, I'm going, no, I draw a line. But I can't draw a line because you start hearing it from reliable people that aren't jerking you around. You go, well, where do I pigeonhole this? I can't put it away anywhere because there's just enough people that bringing that up, and they don't want their names out. They don't want their location, identity, nothing. They don't want any money. They just want to tell their story and get it out. And I don't care if you don't believe me, that kind of stuff. But this is what happened. And so that's their reality, And so I can't say I can't say that the ETs and the Sasquatch aren't connected somehow. I think the Sasquatch have definitely been here much, much longer than we are. They're more advanced than we are. If you get into the intelligence and the things that they can do or allegedly can do, it's off the charts. They leave us in the dust. They've been here tens of thousands of years longer than we have, in my opinion. You go back with the Native Americans and the relationships they've had with the Native Americans for tens of thousands of years, generation after generation, dozens of generations. What do you do with all that? And so there's something going on. There is something going on, and that gets into another book. Everything You Know Is Wrong by Lloyd Pye, about where the Sasquatch really came from and everything. And it upsets the apple cart so much. But that's why I did probably 35 podcasts last year, because they're coming out of the woodwork. They're going, I want to tell my story. I want to tell you what happened. And I'm putting it in books. There's 2 versions of each book, and I'm not even trying to write another one. And people are dumping stuff in my lap.
Lloyd Pye used to live down here. I know he passed away, but down here in the Panhandle, I interviewed him once. It was a long time ago. One of my first interviews. He lived, I think, in Panama City Beach or somewhere around here in the Panhandle.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at now. So that was one of my first interviews, Lloyd Pye.
He's a fascinating guy. That everything you know is wrong, and then everything else you know is wrong or wrong too. There's a first and second version. But if you talk to Lloyd Pye and read that last book where it talks about the Anunnaki and how their planet Narubu, which is the 10th planet, he talks about that in great detail, was losing their atmosphere. Their planet was slowly being poisoned, and they came to the planet Earth to mine for gold. because pulverized gold plugs up the holes in the atmosphere on their planet. Did you get into any of that with the Sumerians?
Yeah, Sitchin and all that. I'm familiar with a lot of it. And I've always wondered if the Bigfoots were like the slave race made to mine the gold or something. Just something I've thought about. I don't know if that's true or not, but
Well, Pi insinuated, and the Sumerians is from deciphering the gold cylinders that they had, that the Sasquatch were here already. They manipulated their DNA with the Anunnaki DNA to get down to a hairless human that could mine the gold and think and make decisions and not revolt and things like that. And so that's where, if you read that, that's where us hairless humans came from the hominoids that were here, Sasquatch or other versions. They took the Anunnaki DNA and it kept breeding them down. I think the Anunnaki lived for roughly 280,000 years was a rough lifespan of an Anunnaki, I believe. And so they would keep manipulating the DNA till they got down to us, which is where we came from, supposedly. And it talks about that's who built the pyramids, Machu Picchu, all the other glorious, fantastic, complex, technically advanced architecture that we can't even duplicate today, stuff like that. So that just makes you scratch your head more. I've been scratching my head a lot because I don't have any hair left. I scratched it all off, trying to figure out what's going on. But
that's what happened to all of us.
So what do you do with all that kind of stuff? But basically, the history is just a lie. It's all been doctored and created. Like I said, the government wants us to think things are a certain way. That's why there can be no Sasquatch, and that's why 20,000 or 200,000 Nubian slaves drug 20-ton blocks of granite on wooden rollers across sand in the desert to build. Come on. We can't even do that now. We don't have the technology to build that stuff now. Machu Picchu, the temples in Angkor Wat, and all these places. They can't be duplicated with the architecture we have now and the tools. So what do you do with all that? And it's all been swept under the rug. Government has a certain story they want to tell you, And I just ended up in the Bigfoot world because that's where I started with, BFRO, and I've led 4 expeditions, and I just got into that, and I saw one vanish, and that changed it all for me. When I saw that just vanish, I'm going, okay, I'm barking up the wrong tree here because this ain't a dumb ape in the woods. This is something else entirely. And so, that's where when I came to the fork in the road, I took a hard left and then took another left, and here I am, What do you do with all that stuff? How do you just tell people they're nuts?
Definitely. Hey, there's a pig screaming. I have to give it something to eat. But Jay, ask a question. I'm just going to step to the side for like a minute.
I thought somebody was scraping a plate with a knife.
Yeah, I thought I heard a pig going on.
You hear it? It's painful. It's like, God.
Yeah. Well, he stopped for a second. Go feed the little thing. Come on, man.
It eats. That's all it does. It's like something, a void that you can't fill.
Yeah.
All right.
That's funny. I did want to ask you about some threat behaviors because you've gone on some expeditions. So, like, with the chimpanzees, with gorillas, when they do a threat display, they charge, and if you run, they attack you. So, what kind of things do you look for as a threat display from Bigfoot? Do you know not to go any further? I mean, we know what some of their behaviors are, tree knocking and so on like that, but I don't think the tree knocking is a threat behavior.
No, tree knocking's not. It's more of a signal thing. The bluff charges. I've had a couple of those pulled on me. One at day and one at night. I tell you what, at night it's not fun because you can't see it. You can barely see it during the day because they're coming out of thick brush, but you can see the silhouette and if they're backlit. But boy, something bluff charges you at night. It's either it's either a bear. Here in Missouri, it's probably more like a hog. There's big wild hogs that get to be massive, or it's a Sasquatch. I have not talked to anybody, none of my 400 plus witnesses I've talked to over a dozen years, that nothing has ever come at them and tried to hurt them. They will bluff charge because that usually gets it done. You see an 8, 9, 10 foot tall something coming at you, stops, 20 feet from you, you're gone.
Yeah.
That works, rock throwing, but I've not experienced any overt act of aggression or violence. I've had sticks and twigs thrown at me and rocks, little pebbles and things, but that's just like trying to get my attention, see if I'm paying attention, me and the people I'm leading. I've never had it. I've just never had it, but I'm not afraid of them. And that's probably part of it because I don't have that fear factor for them because I don't think they mean humans any harm. They're very, very interested in us, but they want nothing to do with us, but they're curious because, if you look at an ape, 3 or 4 or 5% DNA, that could be you.
Yeah.
Or if the Sasquatch is looking and they're looking at the same thing, boy, I could have been a hairless human. I'm glad I'm not. Look at those little scrawny little farts. Can't even see at night, So, but they do things, and if there's a child or a juvenile around, it gets a little bit more aggressive. A lot of growling and snarling. But nobody I know, nor myself, have I had a situation where I thought it best to leave. Maybe one time I thought it was best to leave. That's because I had an idiot with me leading an expedition, and this girl was changing her outfits and FaceTiming and look at me, Mr. Squatchy, this stupid stuff. And I'm going, come on, And we got into a situation, and I thought, well, if someone's going to do something stupid, it's going to be this woman. So I turned around and took everybody back away from the situation. We'd already had, as they all told me, we already got our money's worth. We're good. We're good. Let's go back. We'll go back to camp. So, but that's the only time I really felt where I needed to get somebody out there, but I didn't feel threatened, but I figured she would panic and run, and it was pitch dark at night. We'd never see her again. She'd jump off a cliff. She'd never know it. So.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem that they have a whole lot of threatening behaviors. There's a few stories here and there of people being abducted. Like the one gentleman in like the 50s or 40s, they grabbed him up in his sleeping bag and just dragged him over to their camp and hung out with them for a day.
Awesome.
So and then the rock throwing, it seems I haven't experienced rock throwing, but I have seen it like on some of the TV shows, particularly Matt and Moneymaker's show, and then the rocks just kind of thud. It's just like thunk. It doesn't seem like it was thrown with any legitimate force. It's more like hey, toss it back kind of thing. Because if the rock was a threat display, I think it would have probably hit someone in the head. Maybe not to kill, but at least a painful warning. Go away.
If they want to hit you, they can. And believe
that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
day or night, they can take you out if they want to. But why do it? Now, I had an expedition I was leading. It was in Missouri, 2014, 15, 16. Johnson Shut-ins is the name of this area camp. And I had a skeptic next to me and a woman who was kind of on the fence, and she was on the other side of me. And there's about 12, 13 people, and it was at night, and rain was coming in. We were about ready to go, and we're trying to get everybody up. So we're all standing along this trail, and one of my more experienced partners was at the very last person. He saw one run across the trail, like it circled around us and went back behind. We were heading one way, and it was coming the other way. It was coming back behind us to make sure we left the forest. Well, then we stopped because we heard a bunch of noise in this brush, and it was probably 25, 30 feet in front of us. And a rock came flying out, and it landed right between me and Mr. Skeptic. And he looked at me, and I looked at him. I said, "What do you think?"
Throw it.
No, I was standing right next to him. I said, "What do you think?" And the woman on the other side of me, Mary, she went, "Oh my God!" And it was at night, and and that creature could have hit us, but you could hear it coming through the brush. You could hear this rock coming, click, 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 hitting a couple things on the way, and it landed literally right. It was a perfect shot. I couldn't have dropped a rock, and it was a good size. It was a little cantaloupe size, odd shaped. It wasn't perfectly round, but it was a big. If it would have hit somebody, it would have hurt somebody really bad. So that was just getting our attention, and it was wanting us to leave. It was asking us gently to leave because they'd started a bunch of crap where we were going, and they didn't want us there. So we went ahead and left back, and it was starting to rain. It was getting really nasty outside. And it was time to go anyway because it was going to be a bad storm. We're going to be caught out in the middle of nowhere, and there's flash flooding at this place. So anyway, that one, but that guy was a convert at that moment. He said, "I take back everything I've said." His wife told him. He said, "Well, I wonder if I'm going to have anything happen." I said, "Well, you're paying for an adventure, aren't you? Something will happen because you're paying money." So she was very skeptical. She has since had events when her and him and their son went out camping, after I'd taken them on the expedition, and they're into it big time. But they were like the biggest skeptics, and this rock, boom, it was like, I couldn't have planned that if I wanted to. It was so perfect. It was just awesome,
Solid evidence.
Yeah. So, but they'll take you out if they want, And but I've never been in that situation. And some people feel threatened, but it's really their fear of the unknown. Mm-hmm. And I get it because what if it is a bear, or what if it is a guy in a ghillie suit that's trying to do harm to somebody? I mean, there are things. What if it's a Mothman or a dog man or something? I mean, there are things we just don't know. So you can't disavow it, but there's some bizarre stuff going on out there. So I think they will hurt you. Like you mentioned, the Albert Osman, he felt it was pretty sure that he was taken away to maybe be with his daughter, the Sasquatch's daughter, who seemed to be very attracted to him. And he escaped by letting them eat all his snuff, and they got sick and started spitting up, and that's when he got away, that Albert Osman. And he felt like they took him like 5 or 6 miles away from where he was camped. They picked him up in a sleeping bag and just threw it over his shoulder and walked. He said it seemed like I was being carried for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's somebody who's got a mathematical formula that they could probably figure out that by height and gait of the Sasquatch, how far and where they took him to. But that one was kind of scary. Jesus Pion, who's on that show Breaking Bad, he had a story of these people, and I don't know, I don't remember what city or what state it was, but they were, it might have been even pioneer times, but they were house way out in the boonies as usual. But the Bigfoot were violent, were aggressive. They weren't kindly nudging these people to go away. They were like aggressively trying to scare them away. And then at some point, the owner of the house, he took his rifle out and he started shooting at a group of Bigfoot who had been throwing rocks at the house. And he claims that he's pretty sure he killed one of them, but he's noticed that the last two in the line of Bigfoot had picked up the one he shot and sauntered off into the woods with him. So that's kind of like the worst one I've ever heard.
Yeah, the siege at Honobia was another one that happened in Oklahoma in the late 90s, mid to late 90s. I think BFRO got involved in that. And there was these Sasquatch that had been throwing rocks, beating on the house, jumping on the roof, trying to get into the house. They wanted these guys gone. Well, because they were killing all their deer. And they had, it happened out of nowhere. And they found out that why this happened was that they were growing a certain grape or fruit that is not found anywhere else. And it was attracting deer. Love this fruit, whatever it was. It's like a grape or a persimmon or some kind of strange thing, English grape. Anyway, the deer were all over this guy's property and they would just mow him down. and that's how they fed their family. They put it in freezers and sold it off and whatever. Well, these Sasquatch were over there trying to hunt the deer, and the guys, they were throwing rocks at the guys trying to run them off so they could take the deer down. And that's when they started throwing rocks and logs and trying to break into the house. And they thought, sure, they shot one. They found blood, but they think maybe it was a deer they hit and not a Sasquatch. But long story, they were, I would say, violently trying to get them to leave so they could take over those deer. And it all stopped when the guy quit planting these grapes. When he quit planting whatever this fruit was. It's called the Siege of Hanobia. And it's in, what's his name? He's got a great book. It's called The Locals. It goes into great detail, and it tells you what kind of fruit it is. The Siege of Hanobia.
Tom Powell. Thomas
Powell.
Powell.
Yeah, Tom Powell. Yeah, it's a really good book. I like that. If there's a book I read over and over, it's not even mine. I read his book because it's got some really good stories in there, really good stuff. It's from paranormal to pedestrian stuff. He spent a lot of time with the Native Americans, out in the eastern part of the western part of the country, California stuff. He interviewed a lot of people. And but once they quit planting that fruit or berry, whatever it was, the Sasquatch quit hanging around. They just stopped because that's what they were after. Because the deer, literally, they would see 15 or 20 deer a night in a day. They would just be walking on their property, broad daylight. I mean, they weren't even afraid of getting shot at. And so that's what happened. So that's about the only one that I would say would indicate violence. But they didn't do anything. With the size of these guys, if they wanted to tear you up, they could. They just want to get you out of the way. And also just scare the crap out of you until you give in. Well, okay, I'm done. I'm not, I believe it. Next rock's got my name on it. I'm out of here.
Yeah, they can be pretty scary, that's for sure.
Yeah, so if they want to take you out, they could.
Yeah, oh no, I know. That's the scary thing. Is if they wanted to, they could. Well, I'm glad they don't. But there's something to that. So, but I have a pretty good theory of how they get away with being unseen. I mean, they seem to travel across this country and probably other countries as well. I'm not as familiar with other countries' Bigfoot stories as I am with America's stories. But what is your theory of how they are able to get across this country most of the time unseen?
Well, there's a couple of theories. One of the theories is that their hair follicles are hollow and transparent or opaque, and some of them have the medulla, which is this piece that goes right down the middle. The follicle gives it color, and they're all different. Genetics will give you different shades and lengths and sizes and thicknesses and everything. So that theory is that they can just turn a little bit and the sun hits them a certain way and it looks like they went into the tree. And you go, did you see that? And you look around and then they really are gone. So there's the theory that they're, octopus, chameleons, all kinds of moths and insects, they can blend into the background and appear to disappear, and you can't see them. That's how they survive. Well, what's to say a Sasquatch can't do that? Just because it's 8 foot tall doesn't mean it doesn't have skill sets we just can't explain. So that's one theory, is that, and they're very fast, ninja. So, if there's 2 over here and 1 over here, one's going to get your attention. You look over there, those 2 are gone. You look over there, you look back, and that one's gone because they're that fast. The other theory, which I'm starting to adhere to, is that they do have some cloaking abilities. And here, you ever seen that video called Squatching with Barb or Gabby and Barb? Barb and Gabby? Squatching with Barb and Gabby, or Gabby and Barb. Check it out. Thinker Thunker does a real good piece of work with it. She and a couple of friends were out the day before and they saw a Sasquatch. And she was over in the forest and she's pointing over here. Yes, it's Squatching with Barb and Gabby. It's fascinating. And so, and she went out the next day to show some other friends. Well, we're walking right down this path right here, and we looked over here, and we saw him. He was standing right there. And then when she said that, there's, and you see it, you can't miss it. It's a predator, gelatinous, humanoid, animal shaped thing. It's up in this tree, and it kind of comes down, hops over this way, and goes this way, and then it's gone. I mean, you're looking at it. It's like the Predator, the Schwarzenegger film.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
The guy I showed you, that triangle.
Yep.
He and his wife saw a shimmering predator figure in broad daylight off the back of their deck. They saw it from two different positions. He was on one side and she was on the other. And they were just out there, cleaning up around, moving stuff around, just cleaning and hanging out and enjoying the day. And they hear something and they look down and they see this creature walking below them. It stops, looks up at them, standing on the deck looking down. So it's only, less than 10 feet away, height-wise. They look right at it, and then it just kind of walks and just vanishes. So what do you say when someone tells you that? This is a military. This is the military guy, and he's been shown some other things, and he's got some stuff going on. And he had a security clearance. It was about mid-level security clearance when he was, monitoring the monitoring of the monitors.
Right.
I'll never say that again. But but what do you say when and you see this? And Thinker Thunker did a real good breakdown on it, and you just go, and it's on tape. You're looking at it, and this is a simple person. I'm not demeaning her. She's just a simple person like me. I'm just walking around the woods and I see this thing. I happen to have a camera, and so how do you explain that? It's not a glitch. And so if they can cloak, they can change their vibrational frequency. Ron Moorhead goes into that in great detail in his, Quantum Bigfoot book. It's very, very good book. It explains a lot better than I can. But if they can change their vibrational frequency, which we humans were supposed to have been able to do a long, long time ago until we progressed everything. We got too many things to do, too many things for us. We don't have to do anything. We can't see at night. We have to have a flashlight. We can't do enough work, so we have a computer. We can't get anywhere fast enough, so we get a car. So we got things to do, and so we've dumbed ourselves down by creating creature comforts. There's that theory. So, and they're masters of deception and manipulation. So they either have these skills, and here's another thing: if we see something we can't explain, do we go into a little bit of PTSD? Do we have a little shock time that we think we're seeing that because we can't explain them another way because they just get away too fast? Mm-hmm. Or are they actually disappearing and we have to find a way to explain that? Again, that's more things that we're told cannot happen and don't happen, And they've got those screens now you can buy where you can make it appear like you are not there. And you really are. They have these screens that, somebody has designed, and you don't hear about it much anymore because I think they're being used in a military capacity, And they've got those suits now, the outdoor suits, the camouflage suits, which will block the electromagnetic frequencies from leaving your body so animals will not see you and know you're there. I can't remember what it's called, PAX. If you look at it, electromagnetic screening camo gear, or I can't remember the name of it. But it's about $200-300.
Yeah, a ghillie suit or something. Is it like a ghillie suit?
Well, it's not the ghillie. It's something like that, but it's this fabric that
makes you invisible.
It makes you invisible. They will not sense you because your electromagnetic waves that we all have, are blocked.
I've seen something about that, yeah.
And so but there's animals that maybe have that in their capacity anyway. That's part of their physiology.
I got a weird off the cuff question. We'll get back on Bigfoot. When Meatloaf goes, I would do anything for love, but I won't do that. What is the I won't do that?
Midgets.
I always thought it was butt stuff or something.
I'm sorry. That's the first thing that came to mind. So I won't do that.
But yeah, Jay thinks they're physical only, and he's had a Bigfoot where he's seen one to make him think that. I kind of lean to something weird's going on that people say paranormal, but it could be like you say, some kind of weird thing, animal camouflage or predator thing. So I mean, it could be a bit of both. I've also thought ghost Bigfoot. So I mean, when they die, they're ghosts, so they could be like stealthing, like spirits too, and then they could be physical and spirit ones.
Yeah.
So there's just so many different ways to go with it. But I was just wondering about the meatloaf thing because I've been singing that, and I always say something vulgar about it. Well, I won't do that, or I won't say what I say. But I've always.
Well, we can't say it. I just came up with midgets. Usually it's midget.
Yeah.
If that was offered up to me, I go, I can't do that. It's just not for me. But if they have these skill sets, awesome. Let's explain it. And I think they're here to keep us from tearing up the earth and the planet. And they're my guy up in Canada who's been enduring creatures for about 40 to 50 years, and he's still going through stuff. That's mind blowing. And and that gets into a whole nother subject of, are they picking you? I think
I want to see one.
Him and his dad had all kinds of stuff going on, and it's this book here. This was only about 147 pages when I was working on it with him, and he had to take a break. He said, I can't relive this stuff. I have to take a break. And I'd signed a book deal with Beyond the Fray, so I had to get the book out. I kept waiting for him. I'll call you back in a week. I just gotta, it was just too stressful for him, And he said, I just can't keep reliving this because it really freaked me out. It's still, it's affected my life. Well, 3 months later, he calls me finally, so I had to release the book. Well, so this book went from 147 pages to 260. I added almost 110 pages, and about 100 of it is him. And some of the stuff he's talking about is just, it's off the charts. It's Buck Rogers. It's Star Trek. It's, and a lot of people go, well, how do you know he's not yanking your chain or hoaxing you? I said, well, hoaxers don't give you attention to detail and correct you when you get something wrong, And I recorded about 45, 50 hours of our conversations because when we started talking, I couldn't write stuff down fast enough. So I just let the tape roll. Well, the same thing happened. We were having a conversation. We get off track and start going somewhere. And then we lost our train of thought. So, but he was telling me stuff that's been happening to him. It's affected his love life. He's had, several girlfriends that were run off by these creatures. He had a wife that left. His mother left. But these creatures were following him and his dad around for a long, long time. This is all up in British Columbia. And 45 to 50 years. He is 66 now, and this started when he was 13, somewhere in there. And these two main creatures, and we named them Zap and Barry because we just, Zap is because, here's a weirdness. This book here, this is the first one I wrote. Sibylla Irwin does all my artwork, and she had drawn this. Well, I already had something else picked, and I didn't like it for whatever. I think it was a photo of me on an expedition. I said, I don't want to put a picture of me on there. So do you have something that I haven't seen? Because I've seen all this stuff on the website. She said, I just drew this one here, and she sent it to me. I went, ooh, I like that. I'll take it. I like that one. I had no idea. I didn't have any backstory. Well, it's a guy who's been having some weird stuff, and he just drew it. And she's like you familiar with Sibylla? She's like a crime scene artist. If you describe your sighting and your creature, she can draw it with amazing detail and it'll look pretty much like what you said it looked like. So she draws this, and I'll go, that's fine, I'll take it. And it turns out this is the creature that has been tormenting my guy and his dad for 42 some odd years up in Canada.
Wow.
And I had no idea. And he heard me on another podcast. He contacted me, wanted to talk to somebody who wasn't going to laugh at him and stuff. I won't name the other podcast, it doesn't matter. But and so I've been dealing with him for a year and a half, getting all these stories out of him. And that was the one that stuck its hand through the wall in his house, touched his forehead, zapped him. He was dead. He was out of body. He was looking at his body from the standing height where he was, and he was told, "Go back, go back. You're fine. Just go back to your body." So he went back down to his body and got in it, and he stood up and everything. There's a lot more to the story, but I want to just, this creature disembodied itself. It changed its vibrational frequency, and he literally watched it stick its hand through the wall, this big picture window we had looking out over the lake, and this creature and the other creature were standing on the deck. And they've been trying to teach him things for years, and he just wasn't getting it. He would see glyphs, and he was being asked to do all these weird things. And he would just wonder, like, why did I just do that? I've never done that. I wouldn't want to do that if I thought about it. Why would I just do that? He was just all these things. You'd have to read it. It's mind-boggling. And a lot of people are going to go, "Well, that's fiction. That's just pure fiction." Well, it's not fiction. It happened, and there's other people that happened too. But 40 years of dealing with these two Sasquatch, main ones, and other peripheral ones. You would just have to read the story because it's mind-boggling, and that's all I can say. It's just like, but the attention to detail in his memory and the things he was asked to do, he would find, dead, perfectly preserved blue dragonflies inside his house in all kinds of places. On his kitchen table, and the windowsill over the kitchen sink, in his bedroom on the bed. How'd they get in? I mean, they're not in here. So how'd they get in? He'd find, feathers and dragonflies in a pile on his front door. He'd go out, and there'd be a little pile of the dragonfly with like bluebird feathers all around it. So you just go, all this has been happening to him for 40 some odd years, and it's just kind of like the Janice Carter Coy story, 50 Years of Bigfoot. You familiar with that book?
I'm not familiar with that book, no.
Oh, yeah. 50 Years of Bigfoot. Janice Carter Coy. Barry Green was the researcher, and it's a really good book.
Looking it up.
Yeah, 50 Years of Bigfoot. I've got it. It is an awesome book, and it details 50 years with her and her grandpa living on a farm out in Tennessee, and all these interactions with these families of Sasquatch, and they all had names for them. A couple of them stayed in their basement. The grandpa trained them and talked to them. He talked to them, and they have all the language. They used a lot of Native American language, and so there's about 8 or 9 pages of words phonetically spelled as best as she can get it. But anyway, what I'm saying is, this kind of stuff is going on, and these people don't talk about it because who's going to listen to that? You're nuts. What? You're smoking the good stuff. Who's your dealer? I want some of that. That stuff can't be happening.
Is it Mary Green, Janice Carter Coy?
Yep.
Okay, it took me a minute to find it, but there's a lot of stuff that came up. But here it is: 50 Years with Bigfoot, Tennessee Chronicles of Coexistence.
Oh yeah, read that. Mary Green just died. I've got an autographed copy from her. She died 5 or 6 years ago. It was really sad to see that because we were supposed to talk because I want to get some stuff. But they've got paranormal stuff going now. They don't mention it in the book, but Janice Carter Coy and her daughter, they did a YouTube video, and I don't remember who did the interview, but they've got 2 videos that are probably an hour long, maybe a little longer in length, and they talk about a lot of the paranormal stuff. And I haven't even watched all of those videos. But if you want to get into habituation, that's the one thing that just fascinates the holy poo-poo out of me. Is I've got 4 families, 3 that I visit fairly often, once or twice a year. That's often. They have these creatures living on their farm, and they interact with them. Sometimes a lot, sometimes just a little. But I've sat on the front porch of one of my habituation families and traded hoots and whoops with the Sasquatch across the road. And this is a thing they do once or twice a week when it's the weather's nice. They'll sit on their front porch and they'll call the Sasquatch, and they'll come. You can hear them walking through the forest, boom, 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 and then boom, just plopping themselves down, and you can hear them kind of snorting and moving around. And then they'll just throw sticks and twigs back and forth, or they'll whoop, whoop. I mean, it's what do you do? They've shown this family. They've shown them their newborn Sasquatch.
Yeah.
Husband walks the dog every morning at 7:00 like clockwork, and it's about 200 yards to the gate and 200 yards back, and almost 200 acres in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas. And when they get to the gate, dog does his business. He gets the mail. He goes back. When it gets to the gate, which is real close to this really big tree, every now and then the Sasquatch will just peek around, snap a twig or something, let him know it's there, and go back and do this. Then one morning he was walking, and the clan leader, the big one, was doing this, and then he backed out all the way, and you couldn't see him anymore. And the mother came out, and she was holding the baby, and came out and showed it, and then went back behind the tree just once. They said, that's bonding. That was cool stuff. But they've been living with these people on their property and their family before that for probably 25, 30 years. A little over, right around a generation.
That book is very hard to find. Apparently, it's when she passed away, she stopped publishing. So I can't find one anywhere. If you ever see one online or something, let me know. But it's definitely.
I've got one. I'd loan it to you, but if you didn't return it, I'd have to hunt you down.
Yeah, no. I mean, if you saw one for sale somewhere or something, let me know.
I didn't realize they're out of print. And
yeah, they're hard to find.
It's in a ringed. It's one of those plastic rings.
Yeah, it looked like it was like in a thingy. Yeah, like that.
Yeah, I mean, you could take it apart and make a copy of it. I mean, you could. You just have to get it back together, which you probably could never do. I didn't realize they're out of print. I'll see if I can find one because
if you see one, let me know.
It's a great diving into the habituation, but these creatures can count. They're aware of death and burial. I mean, is there anything else you want to talk about? Because I got a really cool story about.
Go ahead. We stopped 5 till, so we got time. Go ahead.
We got a half hour. Yeah. Okay, yeah. We're good. Okay, this family, they moved the wife's mother onto the property, and they put her trailer on the property. And I spent the night there. I pitched my tent where her trailer used to be. It's just right across the road. It's probably 150 yards away from their front porch. Anyway, mother had a dog. It was a big, looked bad, but it was a mutt, and it was overweight, and it couldn't fend for itself, and it was really just a sweet dog. I never got to meet it. She was gone before I met these people. And on occasion, there was a pack of wild dogs that ran in these woods around their house. And a couple of times they tried to attack the dog and kill it. They wanted to, they're a pack of wild, literally, they're feral, Well, one day she was out, and it was about 5:30 or 6, getting dusk, and this pack of dogs was out there. And her dog got away from her and went running up to the fence. This entire 200 acres is fenced all around, good fence. I mean, so they couldn't get in, but they could if they wanted to. Well, she hears this Sasquatch start yelling a bunch of gibberish. Those dogs hauled ass, and they never saw him again, ever. They never came back. And so she told her daughter, the wife and the husband of the couple, she said, well, I heard that Sasquatch talked the other night, and if a gorilla could talk, I'm pretty sure that's what they sound like. It's just like matter of fact. They are used to them living there. There's people, they forget to tell me stuff sometimes. It's so routine. So anyway, the woman's dog died. And so they buried it. And the next day they went out and bought some carnations, and they planted it all around. I think they bought like a dozen and a half. I think 18 carnations is what she said. And they planted it all around the dog. And it was a pretty big circle. And, just to, say peace, have a prayer, and goodbye, and miss you, and all that. The next morning, they wake up, all the flowers are pulled out of the ground gently. They're laying down on the same side of each hole, just very systematic. But they didn't tear them up. They were just laying there. And I told them, I said, well, they had no answer for that until I said something. I said, I think Sasquatch bury their dead. They don't want the graves to be found. And so they bury them in very isolated places. And I've got other stories about that too. But, and I don't think they wanted the wild pack of dogs or anybody else to find out where your dog was buried. They wanted the dog to rest in peace. So they pulled the flowers out. Crazy. But that shows a symbiotic relationship with these people and the Squatch and their reverence for the dead animal, which that one Sasquatch came and ran off the dogs. Now, who's even clever enough to make that kind of stuff up? You know what I mean? When people start telling you these things. And,
I totally agree. I think I'm convinced they either, if they don't carry them off, they bury them near where they died. My guess is that they're at least advanced enough to where it's like kind of ceremonial. So like if the individual Bigfoot dies and had like a favorite tree where it used to watch the lake and the fish, that's probably where they would bury him. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Well, I think they have reverence for their dead like we do. Mm-hmm. I think they bury their dead. There's a couple of instances where people have seen them pull up trees, especially with a newborn, and put them in the hole where the tree was, and the tree goes back in, and the tree grows up healthy, and there's a Sasquatch buried at the bottom, and nobody ever knows, and it's all over. I've got a guy here in Missouri who has seen, I haven't been out to the property yet, he invited me this year, he has seen Sasquatch roll giant boulders across a cave opening and block the cave, and then they'll come back 3 or 4 months later and roll the back, and that's where they stay for the season.
Wow.
And I believe the guy. I mean, he doesn't want anything, and they wouldn't even, of course, BFRO wouldn't even publish that report, but he's seen them also, instead of using big huge boulders, I'm talking about Volkswagen size rocks that 10 of us couldn't move. Mm-hmm. That kind of stuff. He's seen them fill the whole opening of the cave with sticks and trees, so it just looks like a big tree fall. And they unplug it, and they use the cave. That's where they stay. It's about 60 feet up on a cliff, but it's where you could climb it, and I'm going to take him up on his invite. You might read about me one day.
What do you think about like government military interaction with them? What kind of stuff have you heard about that? I mean, does the military like try to do stuff to them or anything? Or I know there's like park ranger stories and stuff with them in parks and stuff.
Yeah, there's park ranger stories. There's here we have Fort Leonard Wood, and Whiteman Air Force Base. Now, Whiteman Air Force Base is where they keep all the big bombers, the big B-52, the big, the stealth bombers and all that. That's where they keep those. Fort Leonard Wood, I've had about 3 or 4 reports published out of there, and there is something going on because the commanding officer told these enlisted men who were out on a night op on a hike with nothing but a flashlight and a weapon, no backpack, no nothing. They had to find their way back to camp by a certain time or they were going to fail this test.
Yeah.
A couple of guys were escorted back to camp because they got totally lost by Sasquatch. And they told their commanding officer, I said, you don't say anything about this. This never happened. You say something, you don't want to know what's going to happen. You don't say anything. So I believe they're totally aware of it, and there's stories here in Missouri anyway, and I know I've heard of them elsewhere. I can't verify them, but of them getting into camp, getting over the fences or through the fences, setting off alarms, and that tell them that there's somebody trespassing on government property here on a military base. Let's get them and get them out of here. Let's take them out. We'll do whatever we got to do. And they've seen Sasquatch on bases. Now, if they're working with them, I don't know. I can't imagine to what end they would be working with them unless there's theories of them, possibly being, trained or cloned. The Hitler, was Mussolini, Hitler, somebody was supposed to be, if captured a couple, and we're going to make an army of these beasts that couldn't be killed, stuff like that. I think Lenin or Mussolini, I can't remember one of the two. I've heard stories, but they're aware of them. I think they know what they are, and they're not going to tell us anything. Just like the government and the Forestry Service and the cave system with all the stuff 411. How do you know what's going on with all of that? How do you have all these thousands of people disappearing every year and you can't find nary a one? That didn't happen without some kind of cooperation. If you look at the overlays of the cave systems, the 411 missing people, and Sasquatch sightings, guess what? You had 3 transparencies and poured them one on top of the other. They would match almost perfectly. They all match the activity, the cave systems, and the Sasquatch sightings and the missing people. So there's something going. We're just grunts. We don't get to know the good stuff, until it's time.
Yeah, we just work here. We don't get the inside information.
Just take our taxes and keep us dumb. That's what we like.
Yeah.
And the Tic Tac thing. My guy was telling me, the guy that I just met, the Tic Tac thing. It goes back to what we're taught. We're taught how things are and how we're supposed to see the world, how we're supposed to, interpret things. And so they lied about the UFOs. Well, it's swamp gas. Well, you're looking at the reflection of the Earth lights on the bellies of ducks flying overhead. It's swamp gas. You're just seeing things. You're crazy. 80 years later, oh yeah, no, we were lying. We didn't know about them, but we couldn't say anything. So they ridiculed and humiliated all these tens of thousands of people who had sightings, Betty and Barney Hill, and all these classic sightings, Rendlesham, all that stuff. Well, they finally come clean. Well, yeah, they're there. They're made off planet. We didn't make them here. We don't know who did it, but we didn't make them. So they threw us that bone, and we'll sit with that for another 5 or 10 years, not getting any other information. It's going to be the same with Sasquatch. I think they know they're there, and they know all about them, and they're not going to tell us until our technology and the DNA testing is going to catch up to the point they can't lie to us much longer. And my guy in Canada, he was his tree planting group was run out of a forest by Sasquatch. Great story, just fabulous story. The guys, their hair, they come running over this hill. Their hair was standing out like this. It's like you put your hand on a giant Van de Graaff generator. Their hair was sticking straight out. The bumps on their heads were like little pimples with the hair coming out. It was just so tight and erect and hard. And it was like, oh my God. Their hair stayed like that for an hour. The story is much more detailed. I mean, they saw hundreds and hundreds of footprints. Some of the guys, it's a long. But what I'm saying is, the forest planting. They were up in BC. They were replanting because British Columbia is really really bad about deforesting and not replanting. So they were on two crews of 6 men. One of them went here, one of them went there. And after these guys came running out, and they all came running back and said, "We're out of here." They were driven for about 30 minutes to the headquarters of this forestry company, and they were interviewed separately and all together. And basically, they were told, "You do not say a word about this ever. You say another word, you will never work in the forestry industry again." And that was like the only place to work for good money back when this was happening in the 70s and 80s. So they know it's, and they're going too deep into the forest, and they're getting into some sacred territory where the Sasquatch do not want you to come. And they chased them out of there, and they scared the crap out of these guys. Their hair stayed like that for an hour, literally. He said the entire drive, and we were all, half of them, 6 of them had their hair standing up. The other were like, "Oh wow, that's just beautiful, that's so wonderful." They were just tripping and seeing stuff, and they'd seen hundreds and hundreds of footprints. It's a really great story. I can't go into it, but it's just, you'd have to read it. I'll send you one of these books. It's a great story. It's one of the ones that wasn't in the book I sent you. I think I sent the half book. But
Yeah.
it's just, you read it and you go, what? You've never heard anything like it. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It just means you hadn't heard of it because nobody talks about it because they don't want to be embarrassed or lose their job. It's a vicious circle, But you don't say a word, or you'll never work in this industry again. And the same with pilots. A long time ago, airline pilots, cops, military personnel. If you're in a position of authority and importance, you start reporting stuff. You're done. You're done. Next, move on. Let me hear about that.
Definitely a trip for sure. I know there were some stories about with Skinwalker Ranch and everything. That new book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's the sequel to that George Knapp book and Colin Kelleher book about Skinwalker Ranch. It's called Hunt for the Skinwalker or Path of the Skinwalker.
Hunt for Skinwalker.
Yeah,
I've got that book.
There's a new book called Skinwalkers at the Pentagon by the same dude that just came out. You should check it out. I got it. I haven't read it yet, but I've heard this particular thing that, well, of course, Robert Bigelow supposedly, he bought Skinwalker Ranch and then sold it later. But supposedly there's stories about the military going to Skinwalker Ranch and bringing phenomenon home with them. Like that seemed like poltergeist kind of activity. And there may have been some stories about their kids being in danger and weird stuff like that. But it's the sequel to that book. And everyone's been talking about it, a lot of radio shows. I got it. I just haven't got to reading it yet. But
I'll probably grab that one.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a good one. And basically, there's weird stories that have come up here with a guy named Wild Trees, who's an animal biologist. He just goes by a fake name because he doesn't want to talk about UFOs because he just doesn't want people to know he's talking about it. I guess though he believes in it. But there were some stories about some phenomenon following Bigelow home, and I know his wife passed, and there was some weird story that she saw an alien being. And then there's also weird stories which I can't verify. I know his wife really did pass, but I can't verify the truth of these. But supposedly his son died a long time ago, and that's kind of what got him into this weird stuff. And you hear weird stories that you don't know if they're rumors or gossip or whatever. But I know he definitely has that Skinwalker Ranch connection. Supposedly that Jacques Vallée, French dude, ufologist, big time dude that wrote Dimensions, and Steven Spielberg based a scientist on him in that movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind or Fifth Kind, whatever that movie, the one with Dreyfus, I think, isn't it?
Yeah,
Dreyfus? Yeah. But supposedly Bigelow brought that dude to Skinwalker Ranch. So there's a lot of stuff we don't know. That's why Bigelow annoys me, because he hides all this stuff. But there's just weird stories. But that book, check it out when you can. That sounds like one you should grab for sure.
That's pretty cool. I will.
I need to read it. But Skinwalker's at the Pentagon.
Yeah. Well, Jacques Valise, I've read a couple of his books, and I had the pleasure of having a conversation, trading a couple of letters with J. Allen Hynek before he passed
Oh,
away.
okay.
And actually, our letters were put in the Omni magazine, and I can't find that magazine anymore. It's
That
frustrating, you know. And he was a skeptic, and he was in Project Blue Book, and he was hired to be a scientist and poo-poo all of that. And the more he looked in, he said, "I can't do this. This is
Project
some
Blue
real
Book.
stuff here. I can't poo-poo this because I believe it. This is all exactly what looks like it's happening, and I can show you how it does happen, how it works. We have the technology to mimic it and reproduce it." And so, so he went from a hired skeptic, to a believer. And so he got a lot of crap, for talking about stuff that the government paid him good money to debunk. So it's a big thing of disinformation. And so all these people that I'm meeting, and uh, you know they have a commonality. They've got the bizarre stuff going on, and the stuff that nobody will talk about. And I'm taking a risk, but I don't care what anybody thinks of me, really. But I'm writing these stories because these people's words need to be heard, because somebody else is having the same event. You've got questions about maybe a UFO, your rusty orange circle up in the sky. I mean, you've got questions about that. You don't talk about it much, do you? Because it's not something that comes up in conversation. People go, "Okay, well, it is Jeffrey. Maybe he is a little crazy." So I believe that.
That's usually
But it's your reality. It happened to you, and nobody can take that away. And nobody can just say, "You must have been smoking something," or And here's something. In research in the books, and I'm not a doctor, but you cannot hallucinate and see something unless you have schizophrenia or paranoid schizophrenia. There's no other malady that can make you see something that's not there, unless it's one of those two illnesses, with a few very rare exceptions. PTSD, if you're in a car wreck or something, you might think you see your body leaving, or maybe your body is leaving and comes back. I mean, there are traumatic things, but there is a source of the trauma that dictates your reaction, your physiological reaction to this stuff. So when people are seeing and experiencing this stuff, and they got nowhere to go, they got nowhere, and they're just as sane as the three of us sitting here. We're just talking and experiencing life. And if an alien came through that wall behind me or made the picture fall off, it's not because I had a cheap nail in there. It's because something actually happened. I mean, you just, at some point, you want to try to debunk it for your own sanity, and because that's how you're taught. You're taught to debunk everything, because whatever you saw that's out of the norm can't happen. So that's what we do.
There was one time me and Christina left this house here, and outside, I swear it sounded like there was a big monkey howl from a tree. And this is like a country town, Graceville, Florida. Like, there's no monkeys around here that I know of. And it was just, we looked at each other like, what the heck? And we wondered if it was a Bigfoot. Maybe it was. I don't know. But I swear it sounded like some kind of monkey howling in a tree near us, like too close.
The skunk apes, they're a little shorter than most of the Sasquatch. Their demeanor is a little more hostile and aggressive. Probably have like the short man syndrome,
Gingers.
Short people are mean.
Yeah.
They really are.
Gingers.
Yeah, and they drive big giant pickup trucks.
I want to see a Bigfoot. I thought I saw one when I was a kid, but it turned out the police said spider monkeys or something, or some kid messing with my head in the woods when I was really young. But other than that, I've never seen one. I've seen weird alien stuff and UFOs, but I would like to see a Bigfoot, even though it'd probably be terrifying on a lot of different levels. I know Jay's seen one, but I always why do they always appear to dudes that would shoot them, that like Dick Cheney or something? That's what I'm like. Why are you always appear to those dudes? I'm not going to hurt you. I don't even really, not into guns. They're okay, for protection or whatever. but I'm not a
Yeah.
gun nut
Well,
or
you
any
could,
kind of thing.
if you listen to, Ron Moorhead, and I've started adopting this. If you want to see one, go into the woods, go camping, and just don't go looking. Just talk to them. Say something in your head. Just say, "I'd like to see you. I'd like to know your presence. I'd like to." And he talks about having a clear head and a clear heart, a good, pure heart, because they are sentient and sapient beings. They think, they reason, they feel pain, they have emotion and emotions, and so you need to kind of communicate with them on a different level than going out and banging on trees and whoop, 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 whoop. Although I've done that, I do that far less now because it's counterproductive. I've asked for communication and I've gotten it, and the rocks on that. Right.
Sasquatch Evidence of Enigma 2. Where's the best
Yeah.
place to get it? Amazon, or where's the best place?
Well, Amazon, I sell them out of my house, but they're full color. And you got this smaller version of this, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because I know you've got that in there.
Okay, that's from a trail cam or something? Wow.
Yeah, it's in the book you got. If I sent you the green
Yeah.
one, that was it. Yeah, that's a former government guy too. He's got like 32 cameras on his head. Yeah, and something
That is a trip.
that is a good picture. It's color. But anyway, I sell these books out of my house, the color versions. They're $22 plus some shipping, but they're very nice paper, all color. Nice slick paper, really nicely put together. You can buy them on Amazon through Beyond the Fray Publishing. I got a book deal with them, and so they do the black and white versions. The pictures don't show up all that great because on pulp paper, but that's what paperbacks are for. It's cheap pulp paper and everything, and it saves people money, and I'm all about that. The Kindle version is really good, and they're going to release my book. Beyond the Fray Publishing will be releasing it sometime, probably mid-February, because I just sent them my manuscript now that my books are out. So they're going to be selling them on Amazon, the black and white versions. So I autograph all my books out of the house. My website is www.relichominid.com. RELICHOMINID.com. And you can order the books, and I autograph them, mail them out. They're real nice. Just depends on your budget, but the guy in here with that handprint, he lets a guy hunt his property. He doesn't hunt as much as this guy does. This guy needs to feed his family. And so one day, the guy who was hunting the property, and I've been there. I've been up on the blind this guy was in. And so I'm lucky enough. I work out of my house. I can go visit a lot of these people. I can just drop what I'm doing and go. My wife's very understanding. It's really good. I think she just wants me out of here anyway. So, but anyway, I went down there. I sat in that blind, but he was down. He was in the blind. He was about to get down. He was smoking his last cigarette, and this Sasquatch walks out of the woods, and this clearing is about 35 yards across. I think it's about right. Yeah, 35 yards. The Sasquatch comes up out of the woods into the clearing. He looks up and sees the guy, and they're staring at each other. And he's sitting there smoking a cigarette. And he's just like stops like this, and the Sasquatch looks at him, takes a left, and walks along the tree line right in front of a camera. So there goes the theory about they can hear and smell electronics and avoid the cameras. This Sasquatch obviously didn't get the memo because he walked right in front of the camera in broad daylight. But I think if they're like people. I think you get a dumbass, you get a smart one, and he just wasn't paying attention. He was kind of paying attention to the guy, and so he got the photo. It is just clear as a bell. It's a great photo. He just gave it to me. He said, "Yeah, show him." And he's got 36 cameras in 3 sets. He's got there's in sets of 3 there, and he's got 3 trees, and each camera is pointing at the other camera. And it's pointing at that camera. So whatever, if it shoots on one and misses, he won't miss whatever creature's out there. Something about a month ago destroyed 3 of his cameras. 2 of them had the straps torn, like the strap that goes around the tree, they just tore it. And it broke the metal housing, the clasp that holds the thing closed. It broke the little eyelets where the camera goes through on that really nice space age plastic that's on cameras. Just snapped that right off. I set up a gifting area. One of the cameras that it destroyed, it took over and threw it on top of my gifting area with my little dolls and some beads and trinkets and mirrors. It dragged that about 25 or 30 feet away and threw it on top of the pile of stuff I had. It was like
Interesting.
Yeah. And the SD card was squeezed inside the camera. In other words, it was a mini SD card in an adapter plugged in. And the housing around where that SD card goes in was not damaged, but the SD card, it looked like somebody had taken pliers or just squeezed it because there was no data. There's data on there. We couldn't get to it unless you want to spend $400 to $1,000 to data retrieval. You can send these high-tech companies, they charge good money. There's something on there because the little gold, bands, your circuits, those were broken inside the camera. That you took the thing out, it had been manipulated and then put back in. The guys that I had working on it couldn't figure it out. I finally told them what I thought was on there, and they sent the thing back. But there's some weird stuff going on. Like why would if it was a person? If you're after something specifically, just go take the cameras. Why would you tear them up? Now, it could have been a bear. There's teeth marks on them, stuff like that. But these straps were torn. I mean, like, popped.
Yeah.
And that SD card in that one was manipulated, damaged, torn, pinched, broken, and then put back in the camera. And then that camera was taken and thrown on top of the stuff I had from my gifting pile. That is a message. Because if it's just a trespasser, on his property, which it could have been, but, to go run through it, you've got to know there's 30 some other odd cameras there. You're all over the place, it was just odd. These beings, I think, are smarter than we are, smarter than we think we'll ever be. I mean, they have powers, and I just don't think they choose to use them toward us or on us because they're not here for that. They're here to keep our stuff together so we don't destroy the planet, destroy ourselves. I think they're here to kind of guide us along. I can't tell you how I know that or how I feel it. It is a feeling I get, because I'm having.
Yeah. It's kind of like the native perspective, like boss of the mountain.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't say no, because there's just enough weird stuff going on in my life and yours with your UFO. And, Jay, you saw a set. I mean, nobody can tell you didn't see that because you know what you saw, right? I mean, you can't be talked out of that.
We've had some weird stuff at Christina's house where we thought we saw grays in there, and we had Michelle Disrochers, this psychic that saw a lot of television shows, say that there was grays there. So there's been weird stuff for sure, and I've never even seen grays. But that day, I've done this thing. This might work with Bigfoot, and you may have had experiences with this. I've learned that if I can go to a window or outside and close my eyes and let the white light of the sun fill my, how it can make you feel like you're glowing, and then go and look in your house. I saw a gray standing in an old lady's room who was dying, and it looked at me and looked out the door, and it kind of looked like astral. Like at first, like a weird sunspot you would see from a camera flash, but it was shaped like an alien gray. And it was like, it gave me the sight to see. And I bet there's something to the sun and us. I think our energy bodies. I've seen light beings, so I think we're kind of like that too. We're our soul or whatever. So there's a
Mhm.
connection. But I've had weird ones where I've let that white light fill me and had spiritual experiences that have tripped me out. Like the sun is kind of like connected and talking to all of us, I guess, in nature or whatever, but it felt like
Mhm.
me that day, like a superhero weird
Yeah.
thing. I've had it
Well,
happen more than once for
yeah,
sure.
we're all electrical beings. I mean, our heart is pumping because of electricity.
Yeah.
There's energy all around us. Tesla proved that, and then Edison stole it, and so now we're plugging stuff in instead of just turning on a TV without a plug and just watching it because there's electricity all around us.
Yeah.
So we don't see there's four dimensions. Height, weight, depth, and time are the four dimensions we are aware of. Science will admit to up to possibly 11, as many as possibly 21. So how do we know what is not there? If you get into the quantum, and that explains a lot of things that I can't explain by the meat and potato dumb ape in the woods thing. It
Yeah.
just it explains things or offers explanations. And about any of these books, you don't have to believe it. Just consider it. Just have an open mind and consider it. You can discard it later. It's the Brussels sprouts theory. Put it on your plate, spread it around, pretend like you're going to eat it so your host doesn't get irritated. You don't really have to eat it, and just kind of play with it and look like it. And it's just the same thing
Yeah.
with Sasquatch stuff. Some of the stuff, they're coming through walls and mind speaking and gifting you, and the rock thing. We have to do this some other time. The rock thing, the gifting, is an overt communication to me and the people I had with me on my expedition, and that is mind blowing. And there was 3 other seasoned investigators I've taken out there, and they're going, "Yep, yep, yep."
Definitely something to it. It's
Yeah.
always a pleasure, Carter, to have you on, and definitely always love it. And I got to close out. And I don't know if you've been watching Book of Boba Fett, which is really good. If you haven't, have you been
We
watching?
watched the last episode that we've
Oh
got,
man,
episode 4 last
how
night.
about that big Wookiee? That's like I love the bounty hunter Wookiee, Chrysanthemum
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah,
That's
he's getting
awesome.
it's getting good. It's
It's
better than it
good.
was last season. I like this
Yeah.
much better.
And well, that was the Mandalorian. This is a spin-off of the
Yeah,
Mandalorian. So, but they're
yeah.
connected because he
This is
finds
the
that
prequel.
Asian
This is the
lady,
prequel, right?
where she got hurt. That happened in Mandalorian, and he finds her and then helped her and everything. But Danny Trejo and the Rancor, that's when it's getting really
Yeah.
good. But I can't wait for it. That dude, Tamara Morrison, he was in a movie. Look at this movie up sometime. It's about New Zealand. It's called Once Were Warriors, and it's an intense watch, but it's about those warriors, and they have that makeup and stuff, and it's crazy as hell. But he was in that movie, and me and Christina watched it recently. It's old, but it's about these gangs and stuff in New Zealand. But that's where his first movie, I think. But it's got some craziest intents. There's suicide and stuff and rape and
Cool.
weird stuff in it, but it's good. But it's called Once Were Warriors if you ever want to look it up. But we appreciate it so much, and thanks so much. Yes, always a pleasure.
Loved it. I'll send a book over your way. This new version. I think you'll like it. If you have time to read it or share it with Jay. Are you guys in the same area or?
No,
I'm
he's in
in
separate
I'm in
areas.
Pennsylvania. He's in Florida.
Yeah.
Damn. And I'm
I
in
don't.
Missouri. Oh my
He
God.
just like answered a status on Facebook one day. Now it's like 8 years or something.
And aren't you
And
glad you did it?
yes, he's doing a great job. He's been doing a great job. But yeah, we'll be in touch, man. And thanks so much.
Enjoyed it.
All
Good
right,
night,
take
guys.
care.
Thanks,
Good night,
Carter.
everybody. I gotta eat.
Send me a link.
Will do. I will.
All right.
Take care. Good night, everybody.
I could use some food too. Yummy, yummy.